Not touch on the night's flashpoint that got as fiery as the body language between the candidates. Just as his campaign signaled he would do during the debate, Romney seized on the deaths at the U.S. consulate in Libya. But when Romney thought he had caught the president falsely portraying his comments from the White House the day after the attack, the GOP nominee inadvertently gave Mr. Obama an opening.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
The Obama campaign is not only pointing to what the president said in the Rose Garden.
No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for.
The president's aides also note his comments the following day.
No acts of terror will dim the light of the values that we proudly shine on the rest of the world.
No act of terror will go unpunished.
In the post-debate spin room, top Romney surrogates were armed with a different view.
He used the words act of terror in a general sense. But listen, for 5 days, they said just the opposite.
An argument echoed by Paul Ryan on the morning shows.
It was a passing comment about acts and terror in general. It was not a claim that this was the result of a terrorist attack.
The Romney campaign pointed to what Ambassador to the United Nations Susan Rice said 5 days after the attack, that it was a response to an anti-Islamic video that was blamed for the siege at the U.S. Embassy in Egypt.
It was a spontaneous, not a premeditated response to what had transpired in Cairo.
Then there's White House Press Secretary Jay Carney 8 days after Benghazi.
We do not have evidence that it was premeditated.
But it was Romney's remarks on his efforts to add more women to his gubernatorial staff that could have a lasting effect on the race.
I went to a number of women's groups and said, can you help us find folks? And they brought us whole binders full of women.
Perhaps sensing his campaign was suddenly in a bind, at his event in Virginia, Romney made a concerted appeal to women.
This is a presidency that has not helped America's women.
And he tweeted out this web video featuring his former female cabinet members, all backing Romney's commitment to women.
He totally gets working women.
Now, in a sign that the Romney campaign is eager to get back into debate prep, Wolf, the campaign has gone ahead and postponed a speech that they had billed as one on fiscal responsibility for Friday. No word yet on when that speech will be rescheduled. And between now and the last debate on Monday, Wolf, we only know of 2 Romney campaign speeches, one tomorrow night in New York at the Al Smith dinner, and then a joint event with Paul Ryan Friday evening in Florida. Kate, back to you.
All right, we will be watching for that. Jim Acosta in beautiful Leesburg, Virginia, with a big crowd behind you. Jim, thanks so much.
Sounds like some good music going on over there as well. All right, let's get some more now on what's going on with Libya and that argument that unfolded at the debate. Our senior international correspondent, Arwa Damon, is joining us now from Beirut. Arwa, unlike all the politicians here in Washington, you were actually there. You were in Benghazi in the days that followed the horrendous killing of the U.S. ambassador, 3 other Americans, including 2 Navy SEALs. You spoke to eyewitnesses. Did they appreciate right away, or did it take time for them to realize this was a terror plot rather than some spontaneous demonstration resulting from that anti-Muslim video?
Well, Wolf, all of the eyewitnesses that we spoke to on the scene at the consulate itself, some 3 days after the attack took place, all said that they heard a crowd whose chants were growing louder and louder as they approached the compound, and then suddenly the attack began from 3 different directions. Most certainly, they were all saying that this seemed like it was coordinated because it did come from 3 different directions. They said that they used both light and heavy weapons, rocket-propelled grenades, and other forms of artillery as well. That is what we know. What we also do know when it comes to this attack is that it was a location, the consulate in and of itself, that had been targeted in the past. We do know that these extremist elements that do exist in Benghazi, elements that the U.S. itself had been monitoring, had the consulate, had U.S. interests and Western interests in their sights, and had been systematically targeting them over the few months before the attack on the consulate itself.
So it sounds like there was a plot there. They were anxious to go in there and do damage to the United States, kill American diplomats, but maybe they just used the excuse of the video to launch the attack. Is that what I'm hearing, Arwa?
That is one theory that is out there, Wolf, and we really don't know what the exact motive was for the timing of the particular attack that did take place. Was it, in fact, using the excuse of the video to go ahead and target this location? Was it the fact that it was 9/11? That, of course, greatly symbolic in and of itself. Or was it quite simply that they saw that this was the perfect window, a target of opportunity for them to launch this sort of attack? We do know, however, that these types of groups are always looking for weaknesses, for vulnerabilities, and tragically the U.S. consulate, the way that security was set up there, did provide these extremist groups with something of a vulnerable target. The Libyan government, very shortly after the attack, again, when we spoke to the head of the General National Congress on the scene at the consulate itself, said that he believed that this was some sort of premeditated assault that was carried out with the intent of wreaking maximum havoc on U.S. interests, for the main intent of damaging relations between the U.S. and the Libyans. The Libyans themselves, other military officials that we had been talking to, also had been saying that they had been warning the Americans that, quite simply, their position, their stance in Benghazi especially, was increasingly vulnerable. So it seems as though, unfortunately, all of the factors were in place to allow this kind of an attack to take place.
Unfortunately, indeed. Arwa, thanks very, very much. Arwa Damon, a courageous journalist. And as I said, you know, a lot of blathering going on. She actually went there in the days that followed, risked her own life, spoke to eyewitnesses.
One of the few reporters that has been able to get inside that consulate and see that first, so shortly after it all happened. She's done some amazing, amazing work. We're very lucky.